It's that time of the week again here at the Tirconaill Tribune, where myself, John McAteer and Eamon McFadden take a look over the completed pages for the bank holiday June weekend. And it's been a very busy paper, Eamon, hasn't it?
Aye, it's busy now. Things are picking up. It was a busy weekend on the roads and around the highways and byways.
Yeah, and there's stories there, and there's despite having the toughest libel laws in the entire EU, the Tribune still manages to get under the radar and print the stories that really matter. So we are going to go to Dunfanny, I think, first off this time.
There's a lot of chat in Donegal this week. Many people will be familiar with it, particularly this time of year now. It becomes very popular with the summer tourists. But the area over by the pier, just off the Market Square, some of the residents awoke there recently to find that a new height restriction barrier and bollards was placed at the pier, sort of between the entrance to the pier and the Market Square, and a lot of debate and chat about it. So we took a look at that there to see. So basically what we found out about it is that the plans have been lodged with Donegal County Council for permission to create an outdoor area at the pier, which is in the village centre. That new barrier has a height restriction which is 2.1 metres, so that was fitted there sometime last week, and that had been restricting access to vehicles of a certain height going in and out of there. But the council confirmed to us anyway that a planning application has been made to them for what's called an S254, which has been submitted in the area, and that pertains basically to outdoor spaces. So somebody has made an application. They wouldn't.
The first time actually in all my years in journalism that I've heard of an S254. Undoubtedly they have been there.
Yeah.
Obviously an S254 doesn't need notification in the newspapers.
It doesn't appear to. Did the Tribune see any notifications?
Does it need a notification on site even? I've no idea. I'm just throwing that out there, wondering about that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
it
is for a specific purpose. That's for street furniture.
Yeah. Outdoor areas.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
So the application is made. What status that has, we're not sure. Obviously, it's made, and we know more about it. And the council just said due to the pending consideration of the application, it would not be appropriate to make any further comment at this stage. But I was down and had a look at it. The structure is there. It's fairly significant. It had been closed. It's currently lying opened.
So we're looking, and we have a picture of it.
So we can see what
was that picture before it was opened.
That's the picture now when it's closed, and then now it stands open as of today anyway. So I suppose there'll be a lot more to find out about that, who put it in place and what the nature of it is. We'll find out more as the time goes on.
We can move on from the pier at Dunfanny, or the access to the pier there in the square, to a feature that we did this week on the lighthouse at Fannet Head, which opened 5 years ago. And I went back there last week to meet with Eamon McFadden to talk about where they're at, and they've had a very good 5 years. They've had difficulties to overcome, like all new businesses, but they are thriving. That's good news, and I'm delighted about that. But one of the big attractions at the lighthouse over the weekend, actually the place is not yet officially opened, although the accommodation is, but there are loads of people down around the lighthouse. But when I was there on Friday evening, there was a crew there recording a concrete. The noisiest corn creek I've ever heard. Then on Sunday evening I went back down there to do a few pictures of the declining sun out across Tory, but just the quality of the evening wasn't good enough. But the corn creek, there's a few boys had drones up over the scene. And then away out to the left-hand side is a place called the Binge, maybe 300 to 400 metres across the little bay there. You could hear a cuckoo calling. It's the first time I ever heard simultaneous calling of these two species that are seriously endangered. But back to the actual lighthouse itself, as I say, it's 5 years ago since the lighthouse opened under the auspices of Forbert and the Tirconaill, the local community group, and that was the final stamp of approval on that flagship centre on the Wild Atlantic Way, and it continues to attract it. Lighthouses have this magnetic appeal. There are people who just love staying in lighthouses, and there are 3 units of accommodation there that are continuously booked out and doing really, really well for them. And we're delighted that it has done so, because, given that since the pandemic broke out a year last March, there's been very severe restrictions on everything, and to see a project of that kind and to talk to them and to hear about their plans for the future, Some of it is covered here today in this week's edition. A lot of it we'll hope to be going back to the lighthouse much more often, you know. But there's a whole lot of interesting things about the lighthouse since it
It's
first.
featuring great photographs there, John. There's a lot of that great detail of the area.
They're kind of offbeat pictures. We just have a nice picture of a local sheep. She's welcoming us to Fannet Head, but she's obviously saying we're not open yet. But you're welcome to go down there at the weekend. The weekends are open. The craft shop, which is an absolutely beautiful place. There's even a card there from Joe Duffy of Liveline. But the craft shop and the coffee shop are open on the weekends.
Great to see it.
So, regardless of whether the lighthouse is open or not, just call down there because the scenery around the place is absolutely stunning, and you'll be very, very welcome. And let's hope that the weather stays fair for that as well. So the lighthouse is the centre-page feature this week.
Yes, good job.
And I was delighted to cover that. Now we're going back to the Carrigart area.
More
to the
seaside
boardwalk.
stuff. The boardwalk. I just did something that came into the domain today, and we just covered that there. But the what is now known as the Donegal Boardwalk Resort, which was formerly known as Coonarie, it's a fairly substantial development on the coast down there, just between Carrigart and Lacca, out near Creevy there in that general direction. And that has now reportedly gone on the market now for a guide price of 3.8 million. So it consists of the centre, which has the bar and the seafront bar and restaurant, and it's got a hall there and all that there. That I suppose it's currently trading away as Hooked by Cormac Walsh, a fine place.
Yeah.
Always busy and a great addition to that whole area when it came in. So that's a going concern. And then that 45-acre site, there's 27 holiday villas in it as well.
It's very extensive, isn't it?
Extensive, and there's quite a bit of it that's not developed. So there's a lot of ground there, but that has. You would think now that with all the interest in tourism and Wild Atlantic Way and all that, it'd be a prime spot. It's on the market now. The sale has been handled by Bannon estate agents, as I say, and the company that own that at present are called Bartra, and they're specialists in the sort of the holiday and camping and rental accommodation sector, as far as I understand. And that's what they're going on. So that's
like the boardwalk is the big attraction there.
Yeah, one kilometre long, all the way out to Tramore Beach, and it's every time you go down there, I walk the dog down there regularly, and we go for a walk, and it's a great facility, and it's always busy. So you think it'd be very enticing for somebody.
So there's no problem about taking a dog down there, is there? Or have you told anybody about it?
I'll plead the fifth on that. As long as you keep them on a lead.
All right.
That's what you do. It's a good place to go for a lead story.
So that is the boardwalk.
It's the boardwalk.
Is that on the open market, or is it?
That's
Are
right.
tenders invited?
Tenders are invited, as far as I understand now, and it's this Bannon estate agents that are out there. Yeah, and they're inviting all sorts of people to get in contact with and they say that currently that the 27 housing units that are there are booked up solid for the months of June, July and August, and I'm sure they're probably well into the autumn now at this stage as well. So
it's a place also, when you drive down there and look around, it has a lot of potential for further development, hasn't it?
massive.
So it's a massive area.
Yeah. It'll certainly be of interest, you think, to some of those tourism ones, and potentially locally as well. There's been a lot of development in that whole area.
Huge amount of development in that area. But I mean, it's in a very good location as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, we shall leave that now, and we're going back to Fannet to congratulate Susan McBride from Donegal, originally in Portsalon, who celebrated her 100th birthday on Monday. And she's shown also on the front page with Father Pat McBride, or Father Pat McGarvey, who celebrated the Mass of Thanksgiving. Now, Susan, this is just a really big milestone. She's living with her daughter Pauline Dorian down in Tome, and the front page is pictured in Tome there by Francis. And Susan has a huge legacy of great memories. Her parents, Betty and John Lamb, Betty Coy from nearby Donegal, emigrated like most of her era in the mid to late 1800s to the US, where she met John Lamb at Monaghan Man, and numbers of the children were born in the US. But in 1921, they arrived back in Ireland on the day that a major building in Dublin was burned down. It was called the Custom House. It was razed to the ground, and that's where all the records, the main tax and local government records were kept. I suppose they had to keep them somewhere. But this was an attempt by the IRA to undermine British administration in Ireland. You might well ask what else is new. But she had her birthday party with her family and close friends. It's a lovely story to go out and do it. And she's hale and hearty.
She looks amazing, doesn't she?
She looks absolutely amazing. She's just an absolute lady. She's amongst the last generation to have lived through Ireland's emergency in the 1940s. And so she was just 18 years of age when the World War II began.
Yeah, she'd have a strong memory.
Strong, but as sharp as a razor.
Yeah.
And I mean, she lived through that whole rationing period of the 40s when tea and sugar and flour and footwear and tobacco and petrol and all of those commodities were rationed. And apparently the men smoked a certain type of weed as a replacement tobacco. God knows what that was. But her story is there, and we want to wish Susan and her family every good wish and happiness for the future. And I know that she lives a lovely life with Pauline down in Tome, and it's a beautiful place to live. So well done,
happy
Susan.
birthday to her. That's
many congratulations to you. Now we have another story here about Highland Hope.
It's a bit of good news here, and it is with a picture here as well. And it's Highland Hope raises 15,000, which is a remarkable sum of money. A cheque for 15,000 has been presented to the Donegal Hospice by the Reverend Jim Lamont, representing the first tranche of the funds raised by his new book called Highland Hope. Then the presentation took place in the hospice there on May 27th, and members of the Hope Committee were part of it. So this is a 140-page illustrated book that was launched at the end of October, and it has proved very popular with the public and Donegal and further afield, indeed around the country and further beyond again. So Michael McBride is the chairman of the Hope Committee, and he said that they were delighted that, and even despite the difficulties raised by the COVID restrictions, that they've managed to muster up such a strong amount of money. 15,000 euros is great.
It is indeed.
They are. So they're thanking all the people in bookstores and gift shops and everywhere that helped to stock and sell it and share the good word in that there. And then, as they say, it was Reverend Lamont's key message was that we should never give up hope, and this has clearly has been particularly relevant to the people as they face the challenge of the pandemic. So timely as well. So a nice picture.
Jim has been a long time broadcaster with Highland Radio, and he has a certain appeal, always had.
Yeah.
And he plays some of the most wonderful music. But you have to be into that kind of thing, which I'm not really into that kind of stuff at all. But
you're more of a what now? More of a
Nathan Carter, probably. Anyway, let's move on to the front page here, because we have a lot of stuff to deal with and our time is very limited because the costs of this are mounting up by the second. The front page, in fact, the paper is literally doing wall-to-wall mica redress. Our editorial, Declan Kerr's magnificent coverage from the council meeting, is a full page, and where we are just reporting the trials and the tribulations and the drama and the trauma. And in fact, Declan unearthed there's a fact there that from research done by some of those involved in the Melton Balliar area, this mica problem goes back as far as 1998, right up until it's either 2012 or 2014. So it's not new at all. No. In fact, RTE Primetime, many people will remember this, they carried out a major investigation around this time 5 years ago. There was an expert group set up that February of that year, and they made a report on the defective blocks, and they put forward a number of technical solutions for the problems encountered in both counties. But so far, the costs of replacing a home and the mounting damage, people have had to move out of their homes. This is an absolute disaster for this county and for the people of Donegal. And they need nothing more or nothing less than full acceptance that all the costs that they incur are going to be fully met by whoever.
100%.
It's obviously going to be the government, because there's no point in talking about banks, because the banks have already lent those mortgages. Some of them are just halfway through their payments, some of them less. It's very hard to see a bank, and with the best will in the world, it's hard to see any bank, regardless of what we think of them, to come back in and remortgage that all over again. So to expect families to be out of pocket with a cost of in excess of 100,000 on, because the redress scheme is capped at €247,500, and it's going nowhere with that there.
Never mind
As
the
Martin
distress.
McDermott says, our lead story says 100% backing for full cost of the mica damage. And we're reporting that the extent of the mica crisis in Donegal was underlined on Sunday night when the urgency of meetings of a number of the political parties ahead of debating 5 motions on the issue on Monday took place. However, there was a very intense council meeting, intense in that everybody was 100% behind the full 100% redress scheme, nothing more or nothing less. We've talked to numbers of the councillors, but particularly to Councillor Martin McDermott, who has done a huge volume of work up in his native Inishowen, where his own home is affected by mica. The mica scheme just was never properly thought out.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it just wasn't properly thought out. We're now learning. I've talked to an engineer with specific interest in housing, and we're talking about the external costs of accommodation, of storing your household furniture, your household items,
Rental costs.
rental costs. That's going to take 18 months, and that alone could take people somewhere up in the region of 18,000 to 20,000. This engineer was pointing out to me that those mica infected blocks, and those are the terms he used, have to be disposed of in a designated landfill, and the cost of that can't be estimated, because you're going to have to measure it out in cubic meters and how many loads it's going to take and where that landfill is going to be. And he's talking, it could be 5,000, it could be 10,000. You could add and add and add, but until that is all sieved through, the redress scheme didn't look at any of that. It didn't look at the fact that the homeowners were going to be out considerably more than the cost of replacing the thing. They were also looking at the fact that it was going to be possible to take the doors and the windows that you have already in the house, take them out. In some instances, those doors and windows are actually broken with the cracks and the
Displacement.
and the total displacement. So realistically, when you're demolishing a house, that you have to safely remove the doors and windows that may not be fit for purpose all over again. These are some of the downsides, but there's no such thing as 90%. No matter how you dress up 90%, it's still 10% short.
Yeah.
Now, when you add up that a house may cost 250 to 300,000 to reconstruct, because most of those houses are very, very big. They have that footprint of 2,400, 2,600 square feet. Now, with today's building costs and the increased levels of materials, you're going to be very lucky to get that house back and back living in it again. And that was construction costs alone. That doesn't include all the ancillary costs, as I say, the planning permissions, the storage costs, the accommodation, and all the upheaval and trauma that you have to embrace. Plus, it's your responsibility to dispose of the defective materials.
The transport alone on that would be significant.
It could be
very,
very
stealth costs on
significant.
that.
Huge cost, but obviously that wasn't really mentioned at the council meeting. Now, Luke Flanagan, the independent MEP, has put forward another suggestion, and that is, if the government does not do the people with 100% and supply 100%, make it redress to include all costs involved. He is suggesting that there's a petitions committee in the EU where homeowners stand a very decent chance of winning their case. You would kind of half hope that those people who are affected by mica for a number of years, and when you see the damage that's been done and the trauma caused, you can't put a price on that. So I think the 90% redress thing, no matter how it's dressed up, has failed.
Yeah.
Martin McDermott is saying there, the mica redress scheme is broken and cannot be fixed without a full 100% compensation that will include all costs incurred. So we're going to watch that one very, very closely, because it's going to dominate the agenda across every area of Donegal over the next 12 to 18 months. But that's where we're at on this Wednesday evening. So we might just move on and just get the paper out the door.
hit the road now.
We'll hit the road now, and
That's
we'll
it.
talk to you next week.
Thanks, now.